Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Terra Mitzel on the podcast. She's a barrel racer. She's coming to us from Wisconsin, but don't worry, folks. She was born in Minnesota and raised here, so she has a little bit of good in her from being born and raised here. But she's also into health and fitness, and she's on here, help it share her journey. And I saw her page on Instagram, and first of all, I didn't know anything about barrel racing, so we're gonna talk to her a little bit about that. But first off, Tara, what's the weather like in Wisconsin today?
What's the weather like? Oh, terrible. We had snow. It was like, oh man, it was cold. Well, you know what though? It's better than yesterday. Yesterday it was like 5 degrees when I got in my car. So today to see it 19, it was pretty good. We had some snow.
For everyone out there, we live about an hour away from each other, but I still had to ask that because when you're up in this climate, literally an hour's difference can mean the difference between. I mean, we're talking about like Mankato, I think, had like 3 inches of snow today, and we got like half an inch in Bloomington. So,
Yep.
literally, yeah, that's why literally, even if you're only like a 15 minutes away from someone, you got to ask them what the weather is like because you have no idea. But yeah, I mean, we're just getting into that depressing winter weather where the only positive I can say from the winter weather is that, you can put on a little bit of extra weight, because you're going to be wearing a sweater all the time. So, it really doesn't matter. People can go more freely about their day. But before we depress everyone with our winter woes, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and adapt a healthy and fit lifestyle?
Sure. So growing up, I was big in sports in high school, played basketball all throughout. My dad was a coach. That was something that kind of ran in our family. So being active was important to us. Um, you know, for me, that when I started this fitness journey to doing this bikini competition, that really started January of 18, I believe. I remember I was in a place where I just didn't feel great about myself. I was the heaviest I'd ever been. And it was, being only 5'3", you can, you hold weight and it stays around. And I just remember looking at myself saying, I need to change. And so from there on, I just kind of changed my lifestyle, I was really going to the gym, and really was pushing myself, and just kind of relied on myself to be better. And then it wasn't until probably June where I really considered doing a bikini competition just to push myself because I had always said I could never be one of those girls. I could never be that disciplined. I could never get in this tiny bikini and heels and show myself to judges and an audience. That's something I just couldn't do. And so then I wanted to change my attitude and say, you know what, you could do whatever you set your mind to, so you're going to do it. And so that's when I hired a coach and I said, let's go. So I started my 14-week prep on July 6th is when I started prep. And so then my show was on October 12th. So it was 14 weeks I was on prep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I honestly, like, I tried going on a prep just in solidarity with a friend. I only lasted about a week and I was like, okay, I can't do it. Like, I don't have that discipline. I was like, I can't eat that. I like my burgers. I mean, I like it. Yeah. I lasted about a week. And again, I was like, God, some of these people 14 weeks of that is just amazing, but it just really shows the willpower. But when you're getting started in the gym, I mean, I always say that, and this is a question that I ask every one of my health and fitness guests. I mean, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. And I always say, if you were to go and walk up to someone and say, what'd you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you. Was that a struggle for you at all, sort of figuring out what worked best for your body when you were getting started?
It was a struggle. The biggest struggle for me was trusting the process and trusting, when I was doing it on my own, I wasn't eating a lot. I was eating maybe 1,300 calories. And then I was basically starving myself because I didn't know. And so when I started my prep, my coach had me on 180 carbs a day. And I was like, what? Like I'm having 2 pieces of toast a day with 7 ounces of egg whites and an egg. That was just breakfast. And before breakfast was a half a cup of egg whites. I didn't understand. And I was worried I was just going to explode. This wasn't going to work. I was going to turn to that Helga, and I was concerned. And I lost weight so fast. And it was, I was just shredding and, on 180 carbs a day. And so that worked for my body. My body liked those carbs. My body liked the protein. And so for me, trusting that process and knowing that, if you stick to it, you can't cheat. I can't have, little bites here and there and just sneak it around him because that would add up. You have to follow the process and you have to trust, your coach because your coach is going to learn your body as you go. Because, like you said, everybody's body is different. So if I'm cheating, he doesn't know I'm cheating, then he's going to tweak my diet when in reality I shouldn't have had a tweak in my diet. I just shouldn't have eaten those 10 Oreos, So that was the hardest part for me, was going into it that way. I had a pretty proportionate body, because I was working out so much prior to having that trainer. So it was kind of just, getting my glutes a little bit more round, bringing out the hamstrings. That was the biggest thing, and really pushing myself there.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I have older people on the podcast too, as long as along with younger people our age ourselves. But I always say with our generation, everyone wants everything now and they want it yesterday. So
Hmm.
this is the one sport that I say is not really a good fit for a lot of people our age because they don't realize that is you have to put in so much more time and effort to start to see results. I always like to compare, trying to get in shape to maybe someone who's an alcoholic. Where I mean, if you're an alcoholic and you go one day without drinking, you've already made a significant amount of progress that is measurable. But if you go to the gym once and you look at yourself in the mirror the next day, there's going to be no change at all. So you're just gonna have to keep going and keep pushing. Where it's delayed gratification, but once you do start to see those changes, I mean, it really makes you see things clear, and it just helps you out continue the journey. But you sort of went into it, but I always love to ask too, genetics are a funny thing, and everyone always has that one body part that when they get started in the gym really really takes off, and everyone always has that one body part that really just lags behind it. They have to train into oblivion to get it to catch up to everything else. I mean, I'll give you my examples first. I mean, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of lifting and loading trucks. I worked in a lot of warehouses, so you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are basically the two nice those are the two options that were presented to you. But I'm also 6'3", so I mean my legs and my lower body are just shot. Where I mean, I can train legs. I could train them every single day if it came down to it, and they wouldn't grow an ounce. I mean, I still have my friends at the gym who, when I come and they say, "Oh, hey Ryan, you plan on training legs anytime this year?" And there's like, "Dude, you saw me do legs yesterday." It's like, it's like, come on. I always said I could inject pure muscle into my legs or calves, and they wouldn't grow an ounce. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
I would say my glutes definitely were the biggest struggle for me. And a lot of it's because I wasn't eating enough, so there was nothing to grow. And that's what my trainer said first day. He's like, "We got to grow you some, and whatever. We got to make you a butt." And I was like, "Yes, we do." So that was definitely the hardest for me. I had great calves and thighs because of barrel racing, and we'll talk about that. I know, and being 5'3", but you know what? Growing up, I hated them because they were so muscular and big, and it wasn't a feminine part of my body, and I hated my legs. And so to come at this, and the judges said that my legs are pro level, was so emotional because that's something I hated. I didn't wear shorts in high school, and to be critiqued and shown that muscle is sexy and that's okay to have some muscle. So that, yeah.
Bringing up calves. No, I just want to cut off the podcast right now, everyone. This is just ridiculous. No, I always say calves are the one thing for me where I see people with nice calves walking in the gym. It's like, let's be honest, you've never trained them a day in your life. That's the one thing where you're either born with them or you just get really really lucky. But hey, it's everyone has their own thing. But one thing that I is not talked about as much, especially in this sport, that I don't think that many people realize, is that just to be able to get into shape, to be able to go on a prep, takes so much hard work, dedication, determination. But going on a prep, you are notching things up to an extreme level where it comes down to your diet. It comes down to, you have to get all of your workouts in. Everything just becomes so scientific, and it really does sort of take over your life. What was that experience like for you when you really took it up to that extra level?
I was so excited to have that goal, to have that October 12th, I'm going to be on stage in the best shape of my life. I need to kick it into gear. So I didn't look at it as a 14-week prep. Every week I looked at it as my check-ins on Friday, and I need to be better than I was last Friday. And that's how I got by, of not eating that bite, not trying to cheat. I didn't think, "Oh, well, I have 10 weeks to work it off." I thought, "Oh, my check-in is in 3 days. I can't have this because my coach would know." And that's how I made it through each week and progressed, and got better and really stayed focused. It was just shortening that goal for me. And I was able to have a refeed every week. I don't know if you explained on your podcast, but I did get a burger every week, just because my metabolism was going on, it was on fire.
What
So
was your go-to place to get your burger at?
Oh, the Tavern in Woodbury. Build your own burger. Absolutely anyone listening, you have to go there if you haven't. It is the best place for a burger, hands down.
I'm not gonna lie, I have been to the tavern in Woodbury, and it is very, very good. I'm not
Yes.
gonna lie. Yeah,
So
it's
and they're so and I would Google the biggest burgers because I'm okay. He gave me a burger. He didn't specify. I'm not going and getting this half or fourth pound burger. I'm getting a double patty or half pound at least. I want every cheese. I want bacon. I wanted it all, and I ate all of it with every single fry, and then I'd go get ice cream after.
see, don't think I'm weird, but I'm one of those people where I literally just have ketchup. That's all I have. I don't have anything else on my burger.
Oh my no! See, and you go to the tavern, you build your own. So I'm like, put it all on there. I want a whole on everything.
See, with having bacon on it though, that just seems like a heart attack waiting to happen though.
Oh my gosh. I was probably in so from going from, only having like 1,500 calories and all clean, and then one day I was probably putting in 3,500, 4,000 calories with that refeed. Because that refeed, you think, that burger and fries, and then I go get Cold Stone. That was my go-to. I could throw up. I was so full, but it was just that was my one day, and it's just that one meal, and it was after my workout, and I went after it. I can eat. I can put some food away.
I know. I used to always put those gummy bears in the chocolate ice cream for Cold Stone. That was my go-to. But yep, everyone out there who isn't from the Midwest, just ignore what we're saying right now because you don't have that. But hey, I hear all these people talking about those top-notch burgers, and that's just ugh. I've always wanted to try every other type of food that's had in other places of the country. But yeah, the Midwest, we have a decent amount of places to go and eat. But one thing that is a big stressor I think for so many people when they get started competing is that your life does evolve around this. I mean, you don't get to go out with friends normally as much because if they want to go out and have drinks, you got to I got to stay and do my workouts, or I got to bring my own food to eat. What was that like for you?
That was hard. I'm not gonna lie, that was because I love my friends. I love going to happy hours. I love going out, and being social. And food is a huge part of our culture, and you don't realize it until you go on a prep where you really have to, move your life around, eating and getting a meal in every 2 hours. And so that was extremely hard for friends to want to go out. And, I would try and go out and just, be sober and drink my water. And it was hard that at that point too, because then you have other opinions coming up to you saying, why aren't you drinking? Why aren't and then you tell them what you're doing, and then they got to tell you their opinion. And they got to tell you why you need to do this, this, and this. And they got to tell you why drinking's okay. But, and then you start this whole conversation when really you just wanted to have a good time with your friends. So that was the hardest part. And as I got closer to my show, I thought it would get easier, and it actually got harder because I wanted to be a normal person and I couldn't. And so that was a big struggle. I felt like I was missing out on a lot of things, seeing a lot of people going out. I had to kind of stop looking on social media because I missed that. That was a big part of my life. And 2 weeks before my show, I took my little cousin to a concert, and I signed up for this probably 10 weeks prior thinking it'd be fine. And I was literally leaving the concert to go eat warm chicken out of my car in a parking lot because I had to get that meal in, and I couldn't sneak it in. So you really have to do what you have to do, and there's no excuses. You just have to get it done. And if you want to do this, that's what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll for everyone out there who hasn't been familiar with why it's called DD on the spot. I was known as the designated driver in college a lot. I mean, I had my fair share of fun, but I designated drove a lot, so that's where the DD comes from. And even this last weekend, I was designated driver for a friend's birthday party. So yeah, believe me, I've heard all the excuses too. It's like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Why aren't you doing this? So I can't even imagine what that would be like, especially when you're hungry, when you're dieted
Oh,
down. I just be like,
yes.
just leave me alone, honestly, just to stop asking me questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, and like you said, just like going out into your car and eating, I mean, that just adds to the dedication that so many people don't realize, because I always like to say people just associate, especially with bodybuilding, they just see people working out in the gym and they see them go on stage, and they don't realize that there's so much more that goes into it than just those two aspects. But most people don't talk about it, and most people that aren't into the sport I don't think would find it super interesting. But I like to bring that stuff up because I mean it takes up 99% of your journey, because let's be honest, when you're on the stage, you're only on there for a couple minutes, and for what the 14 month or week prep that you've done, I mean, for that amount of time, it takes up such a vast chunk of it. But yeah, it really is just a whole adjustment, but a question that I love to ask too, because one of my favorite guests that I ever had on this podcast was I had the number one sleep specialist on the planet. Come on. First of all, he called all the way from the UK and he called from Oxford. And he had one of those British accents where you felt like you gained 10 IQ points just from talking to him, where you're
Yeah.
just like, I even told him, I was like, you're just going to talk the entire time and I'm just going to listen because, my brain is just getting a workout. But we were talking about the importance of sleep, and when it comes to recovery, there's not a bigger thing than sleep. And especially when you're getting dieted down for these shows. I mean, I've even had nights where, if I haven't eaten as much as I should, it's hard falling asleep. But how did that affect you? And were there any ways that you were able to combat that so that you were still getting the right amount of sleep, even though you might have days where you're not eating as much as you normally would?
Yeah, sleep was actually very helpful because when you're sleeping, you're not thinking about food and you're not hungry. So going to bed, I was trying to get to bed at like 8:45, 9 o'clock. And then I would usually get up, 5:45, 6 because I'm excited for breakfast. But that was something that was very important. And that's something my trainer also said is so important for recovery. So, I would after running around all day with work in the gym, it was pretty easy to fall asleep. I would take like a melatonin or magnesium. I take that at night in my drink, and that's kind of a calming, easy supplement to help me go to bed. And then I would sleep, and then and that was a great help to stop my hunger, I guess. And so I could eat a little bit sooner, get my meals in a little bit smaller time frame, and try and make sure I got at least 7.5 hours of sleep. But yeah, there was nights where I'd be up at like 3 a.m. because I was so hungry. Not always. I don't want it to be like that dramatic and people think I was starved because I wasn't. But when your metabolism's really going, you want food all the time. So that sleep was important.
Absolutely. I mean, and I find it funny because I work nights. So, I mean, I'm normally, going to bed around like 5 a.m. and then I have guests coming on and they're talking about, how they're getting up at 5 a.m. So I always find that fascinating. And then, yeah, it's interesting though, because a lot of my friends are just like you, they're going to bed at like 8 o'clock, and, I'm either, halfway through work or I'm just getting started at work, and then they're going to bed, and it screws up everything. But yeah, sleep scheduling, I mean, that's why I'm so interested in that, because I have the thing where it's very hard to go to sleep when the sun's get coming up. I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
it's
I
it's
bet.
it's a whole different thing. But yeah, I always just found that so fascinating how I always said there's almost no better feeling in the world than after you have a nice long hard workout or long hard day and you're able to get that proper amount of sleep and you wake up feeling like a superhero, because
Yeah.
oh my god, there's almost no better feeling in the world where you just wake up and you feel like you can conquer the entire day. But one thing, I mean, with the myths and the stereotypes that I love to bust in this podcast, I mean, we touched base on it briefly before we started recording, and you talked about it a little bit. But I mean, I always say there have been so many positive things with Instagram over the last 5 years, but there's still so many women that have that fear where if they walk into the gym and they, touch one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight and turn into, like you said, a Helga or something like that. And just, I mean, I always say to that, first of all, if that happens to you, I'll give you my number and I'll spend my entire life savings, just talking to you for 15 minutes, because, me and everyone else and, the government would probably kidnap you and steal your genetics. But it is such a funny thing to hear, but there is a lot of fear that comes with that. And obviously you had that reservation at first for a little bit, but how did you overcome it? And what advice do you like to give for people who might come up to you and might say that? Because I bet you still do hear that a lot.
Oh, I hear that all the time, and how I overcame it is I saw the changes drastically and they were quick. Like I said, I was on 180 grams of carbs 5 days out of the week. And I dropped weight so fast, and I could see myself leaning. And what people don't realize is when you work out and you tear that muscle and that muscle grows, that eats the fat. So that gets you smaller, that sucks it in. Like my hamstrings never felt tighter. My arms, the fat around them, and every girl knows when you put your arms down, you have that fat in between, your arm and your chest area, like that every girl wants to get rid of. When you lift your weights, when you do your chest, when you do things like that, that muscle, eats away at that fat and it burns and it disappears. So unless you're eating 5 pizzas and lifting crazy heavy where it's gonna build that fat with the muscle, you're gonna get bigger and you're gonna bulk, and that's what bulking is. But in this instance, it's absolutely not true. And the way to lean out is not sitting on the cardio or on the stair stepper or the treadmill for 3 hours a day. Really, I my cardio lessened, and right now my trainer's lowering my cardio now that I'm off season to try and and building that muscle to make sure that it's still eating that fat. So that's a great myth to talk about and to continue to push women to get into the gym and to lift those heavy weights because that's where you truly will see results. Now, for me personally, I saw that, right off the bat, and I did lift quite a bit prior, and I was in this gym where they did lift heavy. Women did look great, and they were, keeping up with the guys, and so I had an idea. I just didn't realize I could eat, this clean food, and they would work hand in hand, and I would lean out that fast. So it was really cool to see. It was like a science project.
Yeah, I always say you're sort of like a mad scientist, is sort of concocting your own potion and seeing what works best for you. But on top of that question, I mean, the number one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than it does guys, at least in the gym, is that confidence boost that working out gives you. Because I mean, like you're talking about, I mean, seeing that flab be gone, and just we've heard so many stories on this podcast of women who have made life changing decisions, and they've it's just impacted their lives in such a positive way. How have you taken that confidence boost that you get from the gym and use that to impact your every aspect of your life? Because I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and impact every aspect of your life.
Oh, absolutely. This has changed my life. I look at the world differently with my career. I go into work every day much more confident. And how my customers see me and how I handle things. I'm a buyer for a medical company in the cities, and so the way that I interact with my suppliers and my customers and my coworkers, I'm more assertive. I'm more, aggressive when I need to be. I believe in myself, and it has changed that whole part of my life. And then going into relationships with friends, family, and any in that aspect, I am more confident, and I, know that I have a lot to offer, and that, I can do whatever sets my mind to it. And so it's been huge. And then, we'll touch base on barrel racing, but that completely changed the game for me in barrel racing with this fitness journey, and how I competed. I had the best year of my life, and we can go into that later. But fitness has all around changed me for the better.
Well, before we go on, I mean, you already brought it up, and I was actually going to probably ask about that sooner rather than later, so we can get into it right now. So first of all, I was looking at your profile, and I was like, oh, she rides horses? And I was like, barrel racing? What is that? I mean, because I'm a city boy. I've never,
Mhm.
really, I mean, I have family in Nebraska, and they had a few horses on their farm, but that's about as close as I've ever got. So what got you into riding horses?
Hey, that's a great question. My parents asked that too because we grew up in Maple Grove, Minnesota. They're like, "What the hell? Like, where did that come from?" I've always been that, I was that little girl that was obsessed with horses, and I just never grew out of it. My great aunt had horses in South Dakota. We'd visit her like twice a year, and they just stole my heart, and I couldn't let them go. So growing up, I just pursued them. Got a job when I was 13 milking cows to buy my first horse because my parents didn't have horses, and then I just took it from there. And now, I have three beautiful horses. I compete all around the Midwest. And barrel racing is, one of my main joys in life and something that I work towards every day.
I have a story to tell everyone on the podcast of one of my first encounters that I had with horses when I was at my uncle's farm. So okay, so he had two horses. One of them was a black horse and it had a blue eye and a black eye. It was really cool. So I called him Stally the Stallion, because I was young, but so we were out and there was like a big patch of land, and the horse was friendly enough, it recognized me, and I'd come over and it would pet me, or it wouldn't pet me, I would pet it. That would be actually really really cool if you saw a horse petting a human. That would be definitely a sight to see. But so I was just chilling out with it, and my brother decides it would be a funny thing. He didn't shoot the horse, but he had a BB gun and he shot it like close to the horse, not even close. So like he was standing by it, and then he had his gun pointed like the other way, and he was like just shooting it. He was young too, but that the sound of it going off spooked the horse, and it went up on its hind legs, and then its hoof fell on my foot when
Oh,
when it came
sure.
down. So yeah, that it completely like smashed one of my big toe, but the toe's fine now. But yeah, I always have to tell that story whenever people bring up horses, just because that was a huge thing. But yeah, I mean, and that's just so fascinating. So what's barrel racing, and how is it different from just your average horse racing?
Sure. So barrel racing, for those that have ever been to a rodeo, those are the girls that run around the three barrels as fast as they can. It's a timed event, so it's right before bull riding. Typically, it's really big down south. I mean, it's big everywhere, but it's as fast as you can go. So that's why I love it. There's no politics in it. It's not about who's your last name, who you know, how much money you spent. It's about how fast can you run around those three barrels in the cloverleaf pattern. Um, it's different than regular racing, as regular racing on the track, you're running in a straight line. You're typically on a thoroughbred, with little jockeys that weigh, 80 pounds and these little tiny saddles. Barrel racing, it's not like that at all. You just have your own tack, and I'm clearly not 80 pounds, and most people aren't that run them. And you turn. So it's all about running fast and sitting down on their hind end and turning that barrel as fast as they can, the three times, and not tipping a barrel. So that's a little bit of the difference.
And that's awesome. And I actually had another girl who horse rode too on the podcast, and it's one of those sports where you don't think about, like, being in great shape really helps you, but being in great shape immensely helps you when you're
Oh
riding.
yeah.
And like you said, you've had one of your best years, but how in other ways, other than just, the feel of it, how in other ways has this working out really helped you in your barrel racing career? Does it just make you, how does being stronger make you a better racer?
So the funny thing I always say to people is, my mare, my girl, you call them a mare, my female horse, she loves to turn the barrels so much. So she gets so excited, she tries to turn them early. So in the past, we've always had problems tipping barrels, and when you tip a barrel, you don't get a time. And this year, I got really good at saving them. You can touch the barrel, so I physically, as we're running 40 miles an hour, if she turns it too short, I'll physically grab it by the rim and put it back up. And that's something I've never been able to do. I've always said I wanted to. I've tried in the past, but I just couldn't hand-eye coordination, going too fast, whatever. And this year, I've saved 4, I think, and it's been incredible. And I know it's my mind clarity, it's my muscles that I've gained, it's my confidence. I'm more flexible. And one of those saves made me win my division, and I pulled a $900 check. And last year, that would have gone down. So it was really cool to see that and know that. I prefer us not to tip a barrel. We're kind of working on that, but when we have, we do what we have to do. So yeah, so that was a big thing I noticed this year.
That is so awesome. So what are your current plans with barrel racing? Is there anything coming up in the future for you?
Oh, absolutely. So right now they're kind of on break. They're getting
I was gonna say,
fluffy
if
and
you're doing it in this type of weather, that's real dedication.
well, I do. I still run. I feed them every day, and oh,
Oh yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So they don't. But they do get a little break, just like everyone needs a break from something. So while I was at the end of my prep, when I was getting really tired and I couldn't ride much, and I didn't want to get hurt, they did have a little bit of time off. So now after Christmas, I will get back going, and I have a rodeo in Verndale, Minnesota. I'll take my horse to February. So it's the years past I've gone, it's been 2 degrees, but at least it's heated. So we just have to get there and get in and get going. So then in the spring, I will pick back up and go throughout the Midwest, travel, and get going to more barrel
You're
races.
about to make
And
me cry just talking about 2 degrees. I don't even wanna think about it. I don't
it
even
was
wanna think.
yesterday.
I just wanna ignore
Yesterday
I
was
just wanna
two.
ignore that that's ever a possibility, but,
I
y
know.
the first time we hit -10 is, really. I mean, last year with the polar vortex, so I had a job where I worked outside too, and I'm not even gonna
Oh
get
wow.
into that story, so that was guess what? Hey, you're still working today, so that was, 6 layers on for everything, and, my eyelids froze shut because, like,
Oh my
so, like, I had to, like, cough into my hands and then, like, rub it on my eyes just to get them to able to, like, unfreeze. But yeah, that's a whole sob story that, that's a whole podcast in and of itself that I could talk about. Well, we could talk 10 hours about our winter woes. But going back into competing, because I always say this is the number one thing that I was the most shocked by, and the general public I think is shocked by too, is that for so many of these competitors, I mean, posing is the hardest thing. It's harder than your working out. It's harder than your diet. I mean, I've heard it a million times, and I would have never believed it when I started this podcast. But now 90% of the guests that I have on agree with me. But I like to compare it now to being like a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What was your experience with posing like?
I mean, you hit it head on. Like I would diet and train harder than anybody. Posing, I paid extra sessions when I started because I'm like, I am so awkward and you can't be, drinking before you go on there. I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And I remember the day, so my first posing, no one poses great. And you hit that right on when you first start. Posing is terribly awkward. You're uncomfortable with yourself. You don't know the final product. You don't know how to walk in these 5-inch heels. And my posing coach was a guy. And so so my first day posing, I'm in these little spandex and sports bra and these shoes. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, walk sexy to me. And I'm like, what does that mean? I can't do that. And so working through that, but that was one of the reasons I did this show, is to show myself I can be uncomfortable and grow, and I can love myself. I can love my body and know that it's not viewed in a sexual way. This is viewed in an athletic way, and seeing my body transform. not seeing who's the prettiest girl up there in these heels. And that's a big stereotype I want people to know too. Is these are athletes. This isn't a beauty competition. Um, but funny story. So it took us, 5 weeks, and he's finally like, Terry, you need to put on a bottom that's gonna, kind of be similar to your swimsuit bottom. So you need something smaller. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I went and ordered one on Amazon, and I got it in the mail. And I remember I was on my way to posing, and I pulled it out of this little Amazon Prime, and I'm like, how did it ship in a tiny envelope? Like, shouldn't it need a box or something? And I pulled it out, and I'm like, oh my, I wouldn't even wear this around my house with windows open. How could I wear this to a gym? It was tiny, and I started tearing up, and I'm like, I can't do this. And I just remind myself that I signed up. I gotta suck it up and grow. So
Yeah. And it really just does, again, with the confidence thing. I mean, you would have never been able to do that had you not gotten into this, and that just shows, you're. I mean, it just helps out with your life so much. But what was your experience like with those heels? Because I love to ask that too. Because luckily I was born a man, so I don't have to experience that. But what was your experience like? Because I already say it's hard enough as it is without those heels, but those heels just make it so much more difficult. I could imagine.
oh yeah, and for a girl that wears cowboy boots, and I wasn't used to 5-inch heels. So it was difficult. It was really hard to learn my walk and to learn how to stand and not um, tip over, essentially. And so that took a lot of getting used to. I practiced a lot at home, so I was just doing a little runway through my hallways, trying to get used to them, feeling them out, and but then I grew into loving them, and they helped a lot. I felt so good in them, and I loved my swimsuit bottoms, and so it was just the first couple of weeks of really getting uncomfortable for me to grow and get comfortable, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, and I mean, I always say, posing, that is just I mean, that is such an untalked about thing. I think that a lot of people don't realize. But going on to another one, I mean, as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. Well, I mean, both of us being from the upper Midwest, we're not going to get that much sunlight. Everyone down there, but all the guests that I've had on from California and Florida, it's like, screw you guys. You guys are so lucky. But I mean, I always say I either get burnt to an absolute crisp or I get farmer's tan, where, let's be honest, that is not a real tan. I mean, we went to a Twins game this last summer, and I told my friends, I was like, we're sitting in the shade. And even though I was out in the sun for probably like 10 minutes, I still got burnt up like really bad. I mean, I'm just my thick Norwegian skin, where I mean, I can't be out in the direct sunlight for a long amount of time, but bodybuilders get tan. What was that experience like when you get that tan on? And we hear all these stories about, you see muscles that you never even knew that you ever had. Everything really seems to really pop out, and I mean, it really adds on that final layer. What was that experience like for you?
oh yeah, being my first show, I didn't understand that till it actually happened, and it was incredible, and to see that, and to look in the mirror, and to see, like, I did that. I put in my work, and I created this. It was so cool. The the tan really brought the full package, and then I just couldn't wait to get my swimsuit on. So going to bed, it took, I was so excited to go to bed because I just wanted to wake up and have it to be show day, because I got my tan the night before. But also I was dark. Oh my goodness. I was like, I looked like another race. Like, I was black. My skin took to it, and the pores just sucked it in, and I was super dark. And um it was cool. I looking back at pictures, I still, I'm just like in awe at, like, how your body can do some of those things, and the muscles pop from that tan.
Oh, it really, I mean, it's just so fascinating. And then, yeah, I always said, if you always look really, really nice without the tan on, and you're as pale as me, then you know that it's going to be, it's going to turn out nice. But a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be, my up and coming bands and musicians, or my health and fitness guests for my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to step on stage and, perform live in front of hundreds of thousands of people? But that also applies to the bodybuilders and the health and fitness guests that I have on. What is that experience like when you get to walk up on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked, months upon months on?
It was incredible. My first so the first class I did was the beginner, it's never being on stage, and so it was nice to have to feel like I was with others that have never done this before, so I kind of felt a little secure to know that we all were in this together. But it felt incredible, to do my poses. I was scared. I was trembling out there, and I'm like, I didn't think I'd be nervous going on, because I felt so good, and I felt so confident in myself and the package that I brought. But once you got on stage, the lights hit you, and the judges are asking you to do your quarter turns. You're like, I was shaking, and I didn't know how to stop myself from shaking. It was the craziest feeling. And as you went on, and you went on each class, you got more and more confident, and you got, more and more secure in your posing, and it just got better until you got into that open where you competed against the other open classes or contestants, and you really could, bring your best package. But it was incredible. It was something I can't explain.
I
So
always say, if you can find that in your life, and it seems like you have two things with the barrel racing and then also
yeah.
now with the competing now. So I mean, just stick with those because I mean, it's very rare in life that people find that type of activity that really brings them that much joy. But what was your post show meal?
So I planned this 4 weeks in advance. That's how I got through some of my struggles. And when I'm like, I just want to be normal, and so I'd look up. So I had a burger and fry because I just loved them. And so we went to this place. I didn't want to go to a chain restaurant, so I wanted somewhere that had just like a big bacon cheeseburger with like barbecue sauce, and it had to be a half pound. I'm not doing a fourth pound. It had to be something big. And so we went there, and then we got what did we do? Oh, my friends made me like cookie dough and cookies and gummy worms and ice cream, and I ate all of that, and I got so sick because my body wasn't used to anything. I didn't eat. I had 4 ounces of water that day, and I had 2 rice cakes and an egg, and I didn't go on stage till like 6:30 at night. So I went all day really without eating a lot, and so my stomach was so small, and I ate so much. And then the next morning, I had caramel rolls. My mom made those in the hotel room, so I ate half a pan of that, and then I had to go do a photo shoot. So was great, but it was worth it. It was so great.
The hectic life of bodybuilding. I mean, I tell
I
you,
know.
yeah, I mean, you gotta you gotta get those photo shoots done when you're
You
in the
do.
right look because I mean, and that leads me actually perfectly into the second and other stereotype that I love and myth that I love to bust is that so many people don't realize that look that you guys put on stage is not a sustainable look. I mean, I've had so many of my friends tell me, like I love the podcast, but I'm just shocked that I think it's because there's a lot of these shows, like Biggest Loser, that people go on and they lose, like 150 pounds, and a lot of times they're able to keep that weight off. But I mean, so a lot of people think that that's true with bodybuilding, but I mean, you guys have dieted your way down to a weight where it is not sustainable, and so many people try to keep that look, and it ends up hurting them in the long term. But how has this adjustment been like from you? I mean, you're a month basically from post show, and how have you adapted to the fact that hey, that look that you have on stage, that's not going to last probably even for more than a few days at the most, and you are going to have to put on weight?
That was by far the hardest part of this whole journey. Was post show and learning that my lines aren't going to be there anymore. I'm not going to be that weight. I'm not going to have those abs. Um, my clothes are going to start to fit better again. But when you mentally feel your clothes getting tighter, you think you're getting bigger, and it's like, no, you just were really small. So the first 2 weeks were by far the hardest for me. Mentally, I struggled a lot. I worked with my mom a lot. I talked with her and tried to figure out the right balance. Getting that reverse diet is so important to bring carbs back in, when still trying to maintain a lifestyle and not think, oh, well, I haven't had Culver's in 14 weeks. Let's go there. Oh, I haven't had this. I haven't had this. And realizing food will always be there. Culver's will be there next year. You just have to slowly get yourself back and going. And so that's where I'm at right now, and I'm realizing, that I still look great. I can still keep a okay body, but I'm not gonna look like that girl 4 weeks ago, and that's okay, and that's actually a good thing, because that was too small.
Everybody, if you couldn't tell when she said okay, I had to roll my eyes because it's like, okay, that's just okay, yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah,
yeah,
but
no, I know, but that's why. See, another reason though why I hate having people from close to my area on is because they mention all these food places that I just mention Culver's, and I'm just like, oh god, when's the last time I've been to Culver's? Yeah, so that's why we talk about all this food, but no, and I always say that for all the guests that I have on, that's their biggest struggle because so many people don't realize the physical part of bodybuilding is hard, but it's manageable. But the mental part is the real test because, I mean, there's so much self-doubt that comes with this sport and just with this lifestyle where you're constantly second guessing yourself. You're constantly questioning like, oh my God, why am I getting up this early and doing all this? I mean, I don't have to tell you that, but it's constantly mind guessing, but overcoming that mental aspect. I mean, just it's such a huge thing, and it really does, I think, help in other aspects where I mean, if you say like, hey, I was able to get through a prep, I can do basically anything. So it really is just fascinating, this whole mental aspect. But one question that I love to ask, or no, actually I'd say two of my favorite questions that I love to ask. I mean, for the first one, there's so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out, but one of the negatives is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of bottled water, anything, pickle jars, anything. You're basically the go-to guy with that. I'm still at home with my parents for the next 2 months before I move out, after we move out in January. And so, every single time they come home with groceries, I basically have to lift their car into the driveway and carry in their groceries, being the good son that I am. But have you found that that's been a similar experience since you started on this journey, where people just assume that you can do favors for them?
Oh, it's so funny. Just the other day, me and my mom went to Texas, and she's like, "You should be carrying the suitcase. You have the muscle, you know." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, what? It's both of our suitcase. I of course will, because you're my mom, but." And so a lot of, yes, I get that all the time, and I giggle, and it's fine, and I think I'm like, oh, this is a good little extra workout, that's fine. But you hit it right on. People are like, well, you just, you work out, you can do this for me. I'm like, well, I'll help you.
Yeah. Well, I always say too, I mean, being 6'3", that's a double-edged sword, because I could have zero muscle at all, and they just be like, "Oh, tall guy, come over here and help me out with that." So I even got a text 2 days ago asking, "Hey, this weekend, are you free at all on Saturday? Because I gotta move my furniture." And I said, "Well, first of all, the Gopher game's on, so I'm not gonna So sorry about that." I was like, "If you move it back," but yeah, it's always constantly just getting asked to do stuff, but my favorite question to ask out of any question that I ask, I mean, for guys, they have their own issues when it comes to clothing, but for fit women, your clothing options can be limited at times. I mean, I always say, if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we have all the time, where if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to offset the fact that your clothing options can be limited at times, and the fact where, like, when you were getting ready for this show, you're going to need a whole different wardrobe, basically, in order to fit?
Oh, I'm going through that right now, absolutely. And because going through this, I was like, losing all this weight and having my abs, so I'm buying all these crop tops and cute little clothes, and now I'm like, well, Tara, you can't do that, so I'm not wearing them as much, and it's struggling because I don't see myself looking like I did at pre-show, but I still look fine. I got to figure that out on my own, but so that was a big thing I did, is bought a lot of clothes to show off my cute little body while I was on prep. And so now I'm like, well, I'm not going to be on prep for a while, so you can't wear them as often. But I just got so much smaller, so everything shrunk. And I just had to get a lot of belts. I didn't want to buy new jeans, and I just knew that that I was gonna be little, and I was already such a small size, I couldn't go smaller. I mean, so it was just you got to be small, and just deal with that, and that's okay. And knowing that when I post show, when they get tighter, it's okay that they're tighter, because they shouldn't have been loose in the first place. And that's what I'm reminding myself.
Well, and like we said before, the one positive about winter is that you can just buy the one size fits all, and just
Heck yeah,
just just
sweatpants,
just rock that sweatpants. Yep, all
yogurt,
all day every day. Yep, that's about
leggings.
it. Just getting your hot chocolate and curling up by the fire. But yeah,
Exactly.
it's ridiculous. But hey, the other benefit about winter is that my cardio is, I go out and I go play pond hockey with a lot of my friends. So that's a way of getting outside and doing some cardio. But yeah, other than that, it's hard to find that motivation during the winter. But the last couple questions that I love to ask before we wrap things up. So if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
That's a really good question. Um, it's hard to put in words, because the thing with bodybuilding is it's very political. And if there was a way you could put it to where it doesn't matter who your trainer is, it doesn't matter who you are, it matters what package you brought. I wish there was a way we could fix that. And I don't know how. I don't know what you could do with like a scoring system. I just know that who and can sometimes put you in a better placing than what package you brought to the stage. And that's something that I just don't like, because people work so hard for this, that it shouldn't be that way. It should be who brought the best package, who worked the hardest, and who deserves that, not who you want to make happy. If that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we've heard that answer so many times where, yeah, I mean, even the people, if you have a lot of Instagram followers, whatever, that sometimes influences judges to, give you that. But another one too is that, I mean, if you're to compete in shows back to back, we've heard so many times the judging is so bipolar when it comes to what they
Yeah.
want. Where I mean, one day they might want you like super super lean, and then if you're competing in a show the next week, they're like, oh, we want more of a fuller look, and it's like, well, good luck changing over a span of a week. Best of luck with that. But yeah, just to have an overall. But yeah, there are a lot of things that I personally would like to see change. But overall, I think it does do a fairly decent job. But yeah, there's just like every other sport where politics come in, and the committee thinking. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when it comes to your health and fitness, when it comes to barrel racing, or when it just comes to your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have had achieved if we were to talk a year from today?
Absolutely. For 2020, I have a goal to make my pro debut in October, up in Duluth, and do that show, and bring a better package than I did this year. But my goal this year was just to step on stage. And my goal next year is to step on stage and beat the girl from 2019. Um, and that's important to me. So I just want to um, beat me from this year and make a pro debut, do the best that I can, and just bring a great package, be healthy and happy. So that's with my fitness, and see how that goes. And then barrel racing, I of course just want to keep getting better. I have a new horse. I want to get him going to some more races. See what I can bring with him, and my main girl Paris. I want to keep her going. Check out some new ones. Check out Kansas. Maybe go a little more south, and then also just take that and continue to grow with my career, and to develop and just kind of be a strong, independent woman in a great field, and bring what I had with fitness into all areas of my life and just make it a positive area.
Yeah, and that's so awesome, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck in that. And I love to ask every single health and fitness guest when it comes to people trying to get started on their weight loss journey and just, trying to adapt to a more healthy and fit lifestyle. I mean, there's so many excuses that people make, but what's the best piece of advice that you like to try to tell people who might come up to you and say, like, hey, I saw what you're doing and it's so inspiring and I want to get in shape myself. What advice do you like to try to give people?
So I always try and tell them, this is something you actually have to want, because it's easy to say I want to look like that, and but you don't understand how hard you have to work for it. And so it's something that you may want today, but you have to want it when you really don't want it. Those mornings when it's 4:30 in the morning and that's the only time you can go to the gym, you know what, you got to go. Those nights when you just want to munch, you can't. You have to want it when it's hard, and that's when a lot of people give up. And I also want them to know that mistakes happen and life is balanced. And so you should go have that drink with your friend. You should go have that burger and fry. Go on that date. Do things like that. You just have to be balanced and proportionate. And that's the best advice I can give. And to know not to beat yourself up. Like this past weekend, I had a nachos one night and a burger and fry. But you know what? I've gotten up every morning and done fasted cardio, and then I worked out after, and my macros have been on point, and I've already forgotten about that, what I ate over the weekend, knowing that I'm already on track for next week. I didn't let myself just say, whatever, I ruined my reverse diet. No, I didn't. I had 2 rough nights, and I'm back on track, and I feel great. And so that's the best advice I could give someone, is just to keep going.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and also go with a friend too is another one that we hear a lot too, because I mean, just it helps add that motivation. But yeah, it's again, it's I couldn't agree more. But and now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I would like to give a shout out. Well, first, my trainer, Chris Spafford with Midwest Health and Fitness. He's the one that helped me out. He was my trainer through the 14-week prep. We did great together. He really helped me transform my body and get going. Brian Bove, he was my posing coach. And he helped turn this farm girl into a bikini, wearing heeled girl. And that was incredible. And lastly, my mom, absolutely. She was my biggest supporter in this. I called her every day, whether I was complaining that I was starving or I was so excited about the show or we need to talk about the burger I was going to eat after. At one point she ordered me 10 things of American mayhem peanut or American mayhem peanut butter. If you haven't had that, you have to have it. And I wanted it so bad, and she ordered me some, and she sent it to her house, so I didn't see it until post show. And she was just such an inspiration, and she kept me going. and told me, like, I can do this. And when it got really hard at the end, she was right there. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without her. Truly, she was incredible. So I love my mom. She's great.
Again, shout out to all those. And again, Tara, we cannot thank you enough for coming on. And I'll leave a link to her Instagram page down below so everyone can go and check that out. And I always say, buyer beware, be warned. You are going to get inspired to go out, get off that couch and stop working out and start working out because, it's just, seeing all these guests and, just how they inspire people. But honestly, keep doing what you're doing. And thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your story. It was a great time talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So again, you guys, go and check her out on Instagram down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.